The cold wind outside Baton Rouge carried with it a strange silence, the kind of silence that follows the end of something so large, so unshakable, that you'd always assumed it would be here forever. Jimmy Swaggart's funeral had ended just hours earlier, but the atmosphere in the city, especially around Family Worship Center, felt heavier than any sermon, any scandal, any celebration the ministry had seen in decades. The man who had once commanded television screens in over 100 countries was gone, and in his absence, the people left behind were scrambling to make sense of what came next. Donnie Swaggart, Jimmy's only son, had barely spoken to anyone since the burial. He'd shaken hands, hugged grieving church members, and stood beside his mother, Francis, as they accepted condolences. But behind his dark glasses and forced smiles, Donnie's mind was somewhere else. Entirely, in that private, unspoken space where grief meets suspicion. Something about his mother's demeanor during the funeral hadn't sat right with him. She was calm, too calm, as if she knew something no one else did. Francis Swaggart had been an unshakable figure for decades, the Iron Lady of the ministry, the one who stood behind Jimmy through scandals, through accusations, through the collapse and rebuilding of their empire. People said she never flinched, never broke. But the truth, Donnie had learned long ago, was more complicated. Francis was a master at hiding her true feelings until the right moment. And this funeral, this moment, it felt like she was hiding something big. By the time Donnie got back to his house that night, exhaustion was etched into every line of his face. He poured himself a drink, sat in his study, and stared at the wall. The images of the day replayed in his mind, the coffin being lowered, the whispers in the crowd, the faces of longtime church members who'd shown up despite quietly leaving years ago. But most of all, he kept seeing his mother, clutching her black leather handbag so tightly it seemed like a part of her body. At first he thought nothing of it. Francis was a private woman, she always carried her personal things with her. But then, he remembered something strange. At the graveside, when most people had their eyes closed in prayer, Francis had stepped away for a moment and slipped a folded piece of paper into that handbag. It was fast, too fast for anyone to notice, but Donnie had. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Donnie's phone rang. The voice on the other end was low, almost a whisper. "Brother Donnie, you don't know me but you need to hear this. Something's about to get out. Something about Sister Francis. And you." Donnie's stomach tightened. "Who is this?" "They're saying a letter's been leaked. A letter she wrote to you, after the funeral." Donnie froze. A letter? To him? He hadn't seen anything. He pressed for more, but the caller hung up. By mid-morning, the first ripples had hit the ministry. An anonymous email had been sent to several Christian news bloggers and YouTube commentators. The subject line read simply, "Francis Swaggart's last words to Donnie, private." Attached was a scan of a handwritten letter on elegant cream stationery, dated the day after Jimmy's funeral. The handwriting was unmistakable. Francis's perfect looping cursive. The letter was short, but every word cut like a blade. "My son, now that your father is gone, there are truths you must finally face. I have carried them for decades, protecting you, protecting this ministry. But I cannot leave this earth with these secrets still inside me. What I am about to tell you will change how you see everything. Your father, me, and yourself." It stopped there. The rest of the letter, at least in the leaked version, was missing, replaced by a jagged tear where the page had been ripped. The internet exploded. Within hours, hashtags like Francis Letter and hashtag Swaggart Secrets were trending. YouTubers made hour-long breakdowns of the handwriting, the tone, the date. Everyone speculated on what could be so explosive that Francis would wait until after Jimmy's death to say it. Some claimed it was about money, that millions in ministry funds had been hidden from Donnie. Others whispered about a decades-old family scandal that had been buried deep. A few even suggested the unthinkable, that Jimmy hadn't been the man Donnie thought he was. Inside Family Worship Center, tension was boiling. Francis refused to make a public statement, but those close to her said she seemed relieved, like the weight she'd carried for years was finally slipping off her shoulders. Donnie, on the other hand, was a storm waiting to break. He'd tried calling his mother, but she wouldn't pick up. She sent a single text. "Come see me when you're ready to hear it all, but be prepared. You may wish you never had." That night, Baton Rouge felt smaller than ever. Rumors ran through diners, churches, and gas stations. People who had grown up watching Jimmy preach now wondered if they'd been following a man whose own family kept dangerous secrets. Donnie sat in his car outside his mother's house for almost an hour before knocking on the door. When she finally opened it, she didn't hug him. She just stepped aside and let him in. On the coffee table sat the original letter, uncut, unedited, with the missing pages still attached. "You're about to learn," Francis said quietly. Why your father built an empire. And why I almost destroyed it. Donnie sat down slowly, his eyes fixed on the cream-colored paper resting on the coffee table. He could tell, even from where he sat, that the letter wasn't just a few paragraphs. It was pages long. The pen strokes were steady, deliberate, the handwriting of a woman who knew exactly what she was saying and wanted every word to land like a hammer. Francis didn't speak at first. She just poured herself a cup of tea, her hands steady despite the storm swirling outside these walls. Finally, she looked at Donnie. You think you've known everything about your father, she began. But you haven't even known half. Donnie's jaw tightened. Mama, I buried him 2 days ago. I don't want to hear. You need to hear it. She cut in, her voice suddenly sharp. Because when I'm gone, there will be no one left to tell you the truth. And the truth is the only thing that can save you from repeating his mistakes. She slid the letter toward him. The paper was warm, as if it had been sitting in her hands for hours before he arrived. Donnie hesitated, his thumb tracing the edge of the first page before he started to read. My son, if you are reading this, you have just laid your father to rest. I imagine the church was full, the cameras were rolling, and the music was as beautiful as ever. But I know that while the people mourned a preacher, you mourned a father. I have watched you your whole life. The way you looked up to him, the way you believed in him even when the world turned on us. You thought I was the one holding the family together. In truth, I was holding back the flood. Donnie stopped reading and looked up. Francis was staring into her tea, as if she couldn't bear to meet his eyes. What flood? He asked quietly. Keep reading, she said, her voice flat. Your father built this ministry on the word of God, but also on shadows. There were things he did, things he allowed, that I kept from you because I believed. The work we were doing for the gospel outweighed the damage of the truth. But the truth, Donnie, is that some of the money, some of the influence, and some of the people around us were not what they seemed. You know about the public scandals, but you don't know about the private ones. There was a man, years ago, who threatened to destroy us. Your father made him disappear from the public eye, and I made sure no one ever asked questions. We told the world he had left the ministry for personal reasons. That was a lie. The real reason was too dangerous to speak. Donnie's hands trembled slightly. He wasn't sure if it was anger, fear, or disbelief. Are you telling me, Dad? Francis finally looked up, her eyes like steel. I'm telling you, your father wasn't the saint you wanted him to be. He was a man, a powerful man, and powerful men make enemies. Some of those enemies weren't wrong. The room seemed smaller now. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder. Why are you telling me this now? Donnie asked, his voice breaking just slightly. Because I see the same hunger in you, Francis said. The same drive to lead, to be the voice, to carry the Swaggart name into the next generation. But that hunger will eat you alive if you don't know the traps your father fell into. The people who smiled in his face and then bled him dry. The ones who still smile at you today. She gestured to the letter. It's all in there. Names, dates, what really happened the night the ministry almost fell apart, and why you're still here to inherit it. Donnie flipped to the second page, his heart pounding. The handwriting remained neat, but the words became darker. There was a night in 1988 when I nearly left him. You were just a boy, asleep upstairs. I had the car packed. I had the divorce papers hidden in my purse. But then, at the very last moment, I made a choice that would change the rest of our lives. I stayed. I stayed because I believed in protecting you, and because I feared what would happen if certain truths came out. Your father begged me, cried in front of me for the first and last time. He swore to end it all, the lies, the secret meetings, the women. But he didn't end it. He just got better at hiding it. And I helped him. Donnie slammed the paper down. Mama, no, I don't want to hear this. You need to, Francis said firmly. Because if you don't face the truth about him, you'll walk right into the same traps. And they're already waiting for you. Donnie, she said slowly, the people who leaked this letter, they want you to see me as the villain. But the truth is, I am the only reason you have a ministry to stand on right now. If I had let your father crash, you'd be living in some small town with a regular job and no pulpit. Everything you have, the cameras, the choir, the spotlight, exists because I chose to bury the truth. Donnie's hands gripped the edge of the letter so tightly the paper crinkled. Then why put it in writing? Why send me this? Why let it get out? Francis's lips curled into something between a smirk and a sigh. Because I'm tired, son. I've fought battles you've never even heard of. I've stood in rooms with men twice your father's size and told them they'd have to go through me to touch this family. But I'm not going to be here forever. And when I'm gone, you're going to need to know who to trust, and who's already decided you're their next target. She pointed to the next page. Read the rest. You remember Uncle Ray. You thought he was just one of your father's oldest friends. He wasn't. He was the man who handled the ministry's money when things got complicated. When the books had to be cleaned, he was the one who made them look holy. In 1993, the government came closer than you know to shutting us down. They had files, Donnie. Files with your father's signature on documents. That would have ended his career and possibly put him in prison. Ray took care of it. But he didn't do it for free. For 30 years, we've been paying him, not just in money, but in influence. His family has ties to the board, to the music program, even to the security team. That's why you've never been able to make certain changes, even as associate pastor. The truth is, they've been protecting their own power, not yours. Donnie's brow furrowed. Ray's gone now, Mama. He died 5 years ago. Francis nodded slowly. Yes, but his family isn't, and they know exactly how to make you fall. Donnie flipped to the next page, feeling his pulse in his ears. There is one more thing I have to tell you. Something I've never said out loud. You've always believed you were your father's only son.